the opportunity I have of the strategic position to spy and to do all that is necessary in preparation of any military attack. So it's not a question of evacuation only. They are exploiting also the circumstances for their own ends.
The British Special Forces team, who were captured in Libya, are now on board HMS Cumberland, heading for Malta. It's adding to concern here that this island's neutrality is slowly being eroded. James Bays, Al Jazeera, Malta.
And to other news now, and protesters in Egypt say they've been attacked by security services and armed men in plain clothes. The demonstrators had been trying to storm a government building. They were looking for sensitive documents linked to Hosni Mubarak's regime. Amin Mohaldin has more from Cairo.
Outside the towering Ministry of Interior, they gathered, demanding access. But on Sunday evening, as the crowds grew, so too did the tension. The Egyptian military, under strict orders to prevent crowds from storming the sprawling security complex, fired warning shots into the air. The situation further complicated with the arrival of armed men, who the protesters described as former regime loyalists that tried to attack the crowds. Earlier on Sunday, the prosecutor general had ordered all state security buildings sealed. That decision came after protesters stormed the operational headquarters of the state security in another Cairo suburb. There they found documents, police records, underground rooms, and even a passageway that led to a secret living quarter they claimed was used by the powerful Minister of Interior, now standing trial. They also found bags of shredded documents. With the recent departure of the Mubarak-appointed Prime Minister Ahmed Shafiq, protesters feared that state security officials would attempt to destroy all evidence that would implicate them. After protesters stormed this massive state security compound behind me, Egypt's new Prime Minister asked anyone with incriminating evidence or documents to hand them over to the military so that they can be used in the prosecution of former regime officials. Documents like these, obtained by Isra Abdel Fattah, who was detained by state security twice for her political activism, show how state security was spying on her, even hacking into her email accounts to find out which organizations she was involved in and who she was in regular contact with.
These records show they were extremely paranoid from us. Every piece of information that for us seemed insignificant would be significant for them. They were convinced that there must have been some international organization behind my activities.
That sense of paranoia led state security to act with impunity for years, many say. State security was often accused of corruption, extortion, and torturing activists and citizens alike. Hussam Hamallawi was tortured while in the custody of state security.
State security has to be dissolved completely, not restructured or frozen, but to be dissolved. Secondly, every single officer and corporal and agent and informer in that agency must be put on trial.
Today, on the walls of the abandoned complex that came to symbolize the oppression Egyptians endured under the previous regime, a simple message left by the protesters. This is the fate of the oppressors. Ayman Mohaldin, AlJazeera, Nasser City.
In Yemen, at least one person has died in clashes with government loyalists. 52 protesters were wounded in Ib city, 190 kilometers south of the capital, Sana'a. And another member of parliament has resigned from the ruling party, the 14th in the past week. Sheikh Hassan Ali Annan quit in defiance against the government's treatment of protesters. Protesters in Saudi Arabia say at least 22 people have been arrested by security forces in the past week. Small-scale protests have been held in the kingdom's east, calling for more rights for Shia Muslims. New video posted on social media websites show a protest in Qatif on Friday. The royal family is reported to be building up its security forces in the east. The British independent newspaper says up to 10,000 extra troops are being sent to the region. Well, Saudi Arabia's ruling family wants to avoid scenes like those in neighboring Bahrain. There, Shias have been holding mass rallies against the Sunni royal family. Protesters have been camped out at Pearl Roundabout since last month and have won only minor concessions. On Sunday, hundreds took their campaign to the Gudaibiya Palace. That's the Prime Minister's residence. Our correspondent in Bahrain, who we're not naming for his safety, has this report.
Calling for the overthrow of Bahrain's ruler, King Hamad. They're headed for Pearl Roundabout. It's been occupied by pro-democracy protesters for nearly 3 weeks. Shia opposition figures say that after years of repression and the killing of 7 protesters last month, it's time for change. Sunday started with a demonstration outside the palace where weekly cabinet meetings happen. Sunni and Shia leaders denounced the Prime Minister, the King's uncle, who's been in power for over 4 decades. And they called for foreigners given jobs in the security forces to be expelled from the country, saying the majority Shia population here is being squeezed out of public sector jobs. Hours later, the government reiterated people's right to freedom of expression, but everyone's waiting to see if they offer real concessions.
The government is, they've called for a dialogue with opposition parties and most of civic society to reach some sort of a compromise towards, some sort of a constitutional democracy.
The previous announcement of 20,000 new government jobs has done nothing to quell the anger on the streets. What's not clear is how long the protests will continue and whether the security forces will continue to keep their distance. AlJazeera, Manama.
Plenty more still to come on Al Jazeera, including the battle for the Libyan town of Misrata. The rebels say they're winning. And another stumbling block in Japan's political structure as the foreign minister resigns over an illegal donation.
Hello, welcome to another look at the international forecast. We're starting in Australia, in that southeastern corner in particular, where high pressure in charge, so some lovely sunshine to come here. The lively weather remains further north, certainly across northern parts of Australia. Still some very heavy showers just around that western side of Queensland. These will tend to just push their way a little further westwards, but as you can see, the main focus for the very heavy rain will be across northern parts of Australia. Then it's kind of a T-shape right down the centre, some very heavy rain right the way into South Australia over the next couple of days. We will see the rain pushing its way into Adelaide, temperatures falling back to around 27 Celsius. But for the southeastern corner, set fair, more dry weather and plenty of sunshine. Sunshine too for that western side of Australia. Perth at around 32 degrees Celsius. We've got some sunshine to come too into New Zealand, but I think for central areas you could see some hefty showers over the next day or so. Starting to feel a little more like autumn now. Some blustery conditions to come over the next couple of days. And by Tuesday, I think a greater chance of seeing some showery rain coming in. But for the North Island, 19 Celsius, fine and dry for Auckland over the next day or two. Into Southeast Asia, well, it's the usual crop of heavy showers, the heaviest and most persistent showers across southernmost parts. Further north, rather more in the way of sunshine. Ka-ching at 31 degrees.
People talk about televising the revolution. It's tweeting the revolution.